Hi, my name is Ryan Gomes, and I'm doing my OYO project on wildfires and climate change. So, wildfires and climate change. So, climate change and wildfires have been a hot topic in the news globally for the last decade. Climate change has seemed to create an essence of more wildfires, which has led to the destruction of millions of acres of land and even caused casualties in victimized areas. So, the questions I'm going to be answering are: what is the correlation between climate change and wildfires? And what effect does wildfire have on our climate? So my thesis is that climate change has caused more wildfires than usual due to the increased temperature and dryness of our climate. And my second thesis is that due to an increase of wildfires, our climate will continue to warm because of the escape of stored carbon in our forests and soil. So here's a graph. In the top left shows the affected areas in Montana, Idaho, Wyoming, and Utah, and Colorado. And these are basically just the areas of dry land where these wildfires are happening. The graph on the right shows kind of different types of trees and what trees burn easier. So the drier pine trees are the ones that are burning at an increased rate. The bottom left and the bottom right show the drier areas and the areas where there are below and above average fires per year. So basically, as you can see in the bottom right, cool and wet, there's less fires than average, whereas warm and dry, the fires continue to increase. So here kind of shows wildfires on climate. So in the top areas, we see kind of the distance to seed source in the top left versus the bottom, which after the fire and before the fire. The average site climate. So the water deficit increases after a fire, and obviously before a fire we see it exponentially grow until it gets to that fire. The post-fire climate, so the 3-year water deficit goes up after the fire. And then the post-fire regeneration, so it's kind of harder for the trees to regrow after the fire is happening, causing kind of more climate to be able to go through the air because we don't have the wildlife or the trees to soak in the carbon that is needed to get rid of out of our climate. So wildfires on climate. So the boreal forest in Northwest America, their soil plays a major role in global climate because of their carbon sink and source. So all the soil there takes the carbon and kind of sinks it underground. And while these wildfires are happening at such a large scale, it causes the fire to burn the soil, which then inevitably releases the carbon into the atmosphere and results in less ecological productivity, which makes it harder for trees to grow and trees to take in carbon. And it also leads to carbon obviously entering the atmosphere. And then fire suppression practice in the boreal areas are actually going to be harder, according to David A. Wardle of the Science Journal, because of the warming of the climate. More wildfires are going to happen, making the growing of new ecological features harder than ever. And also the fire suppression is very tough because during these fires, obviously we can't get anyone in there or out. And once the area is gone, it's really hard to get people in there to kind of help replant the seeds because the areas are so destroyed. So here's some wildfire effects on landscape. This is the Carlton complex in Washington. As you can see, trees right there are missing. The sediment actually has moved kind of up and down, like more of a hill shape than it was 3 years ago, according to Jessica Havlosky of the Springer Journal. So they didn't have the pre-picture, but this is a post picture, and it explained how the sediment in the forestry looks completely different than it did after this major fire. So as you can see, wildfire has an effect on the landscape, not just the trees in general. It could actually change the sediment patterns, and like I said, it could release more carbon than was actually in the atmosphere to begin with. So this is a really cool picture kind of depicting how wildfires not only affect trees but the landscape under it as well. So climate change and wildfires, so associated with warm climates and dry climates in the Pacific Northwest, that will happen more often due to climate. Reburns are more likely to happen due to droughts and other climate mishaps happening with the warming of our environment. They're hard to prevent because we affected climate so much. And then, according to the New England Journal of Medicine, John Abrams, the global surface wind speed has increased substantially since 2010 after 3 decades of decrease, which is a main focus because we see that there's actually an increase of wind speed in major weather events due to climate change. The wind speed actually creates more of a dangerous environment for these fires to spread because it could spread easier from tree to tree. So all these major climate events are having a major effect on the wildfires we see today. So here's a graph that kind of depicts the major the major events leading up to wildfires. So this is in the ecological letters in the Wiley Library. So basically all we see is kind of the major steps it takes to get into these wildfires. So we have greenhouse gas emissions going to climate change, which leads to less rainfall, stronger winds, lightning strikes, higher temperature, which leads to a longer wildfire season, and so forth. So as we can see, there's a lot of steps that go into this, but these steps are critical in what is causing such a major devastation and wildfires and devastation to our climate. So my conclusion is, based on the evidence and the sources I've read, climate change and wildfires both have a major role on each other. So warming of our environment and changes in weather patterns are causing more wildfires than ever, which is affecting the areas impacted around the world. On the other hand, wildfires are affecting the carbon cycle, landscape, and ecosystem around the world when they are happening at the scale we currently see. These two factors together are having a harmful impact on global climate as a whole. So basically, what I'm trying to say is climate change is causing these wildfires, which are damaging our ecosystem, our carbon cycle, and landscape. And when these wildfires happen, they actually are affecting climate change even more and making the earth warmer and basically the climate worse and everything altogether. So they basically have a negative feedback loop with each other, causing all these issues we see. So that is my presentation. Thank you very much.